So welcome back, Dolphins. Basically, what we're going to be discussing today, I think we all kind of see the reason why I think we're taking a corner in the first round is not just because we need a corner. If you look at pick 13, I honestly think, unless Membo slides to us, which I don't see that happening, I think somebody's going to take him. You have a couple of options. Membo slides, obviously you take Membo because he looks like he's going to be a phenomenal offensive lineman. But honestly, at that point, most likely the best player available is going to be Will Johnson or Jahdae Barron. It's going to be those two players. They're both probably the top players on that scheme, and they're two different corners. One is a bigger, more put him on the outside type of dude, let him make a play, where the other is going to be more of like a utility knife, where he's going to play all over the field and make plays everywhere. He could play safety, slot, whatever it is. So they're two different styles of players, but I just wanted to go over what makes them special and, why honestly I do think that one of these guys is going to be the pick, when it comes to the Dolphins this year. I think they're going to pick a corner up in the first round because the best player at that point in the draft is probably going to be the corners. So we'll get into it. So as we see here, we're going to start with Jahdae Barron. And the reason why Jahdae Barron is right here, it's two different players. So Jahdae Barron is going to be, when you look at Anthony Weaver's defense when he was on the Ravens, he had a guy named Kyle Hamilton. And when you consider who Kyle Hamilton is, not saying this is the same level, obviously he's a college player right now, but Jahdae Barron is one of those types of players where he is very versatile. You can put him all over the field, nickel, outside boundary. You can even probably put him at safety if you wanted to sometimes. And what I think we're going to try and do this season is a different style. Jalen Ramsey was a on-the-ball corner, was basically taking on the number one. And I think with the trade of Jalen Ramsey, which, if I could be real with you guys, I think it's kind of smart because, again, corners, when they hit 31, 30s, they start losing their edge. And you started seeing it last year where he was getting just destroyed by young rookies. So Jahdae Barron, when you look at him, obviously the forced incompletions rate, 14%. Depth of target is around like 7. He had 57 tackles, which was second among corners. Missed tackles was 9.5, which, it's not bad. It's not great, but it's not bad. He can play press, and he was in man a lot as well, but a lot of zone. He played a lot of zone, and that's what I kind of think, we'll read his thing. Obviously versatile is what Barron is. He is a zone defender with, instincts and can play safety, cornerback, nickel. This is the thing with Jahdae Barron, is what you're going to be getting is a utility knife. And that could be possibly what Anthony Weaver wants. They're two different style. Both players are great, Jahdae Barron and Will Johnson, which we'll go over in a second. But Jahdae Barron is going to be the utility knife, where you can put him all over the field and he can play basically anything that you need him to play. It's one of those things that, with the hybrid type of corner, it's taking a risk because obviously it's a different style. But I think honestly, when you think of Jahdae Barron, it has a different appeal. If you're going for Jahdae Barron this coming year, you're going to try and play kind of similarly to what Brian Flores used to do and what, Anthony Weaver did in Baltimore, where you want to confuse the defense pre-snap. And when you have a player like Jahdae Barron, you can put him all over the field. You got to consider this as well, is that Alamafu or the safety that we got from the Lions used to play corner. So you're getting a lot of versatile players that can go all over the field and confuse defenses when it comes to what's the pre-snap read for the defense. And that's what Jahdae Barron kind of gives you, an instinctual guy that, plays zone, can play man as well. Don't take away from that. He can definitely play man, but plays zone, has instincts, and again, tries and gets turnovers for your team based upon confusing the defense. Like I said, different style of player from Will Johnson, very versatile towards everything that he's doing, and he's very instinctual. The thing is he's a good tackler, very instinctual, can make some plays, and you're getting kind of like trying to form into another Kyle Hamilton, where it's a guy that can play all over the field. You can put him on your number one, you can put him in the nickel, you can put him at safety, you can even put him as a Mike linebacker, something like that. Kind of similar to what Javon Holland used to do with Brian Flores, where we would put Javon Holland all over the field. He's the same, but as a corner. So I think it would be, phenomenal if we're going that route, because I truly do think that now you're going to get a corner, and the reason behind it is because, at the point that we're at, the best player available is probably going to be one of these two players, and it would fill, exactly what we need on this defense. And, again, Jahdae Barron getting that versatility knife where you can just put him, if you look at this, 15 snaps at safety, 142 snaps at linebacker, 679 snaps wide, 122 snaps on the slot, 12 snaps obviously up in the top, but that was blitzing. But you can see he plays literally everywhere, and he has that, he kind of has that, I would say, kind of Jalen Ramsey type of feel where, where they would put Jalen Ramsey all over the place. Jahdae Barron kind of has that in him where he just can confuse the crap out of you. You don't know where he is on the field at all times. There's more. So yeah, when you look at this, 5'11", 194 pounds, you can see a lot of the stuff that they have in here. He is, big. He's not humongous, but he's big. He's versatile. He is pretty decently fast for when it comes to closing on whatever he wants. Zone is going to be his strong suit, but it definitely can play man if he wanted to. And it's the instincts. The instincts is what you see with him. He definitely has the instincts to break on the ball and be able to make a freaking play, which we did not have a lot of that last year. Obviously he needs to work on his man coverage a little bit more, and he's pretty fast, but again, needs to work on the man coverage, which he will do. But again, it's the movement, the anticipation that you're getting an instinctual player that can play all over the field. They have Stephon Gilmore as the comp. I like that comp, but I just see a dude that, is trying to play similar. Now, I'm not saying he's the same level, but trying to play similar to what Jalen Ramsey was on the Rams. Just someone that plays all over the field, almost 6 feet tall, almost 200 pounds. He's a great zone player, can work on his man stuff, can tackle, and, it's one of those that he has that football player in him as well, which Chris Greer was talking about when it came to, drafting players. He's got that football in him where he just loves this game, which you don't necessarily find with a lot of players. So I think Jahdae Barron is definitely someone to keep an eye for. Where's Will Johnson? Here we go. We got Will Johnson, which personally is kind of the guy that I'm leaning towards. So what you're going to get with this dude is kind of another Jalen Ramsey. Personally, in my personal opinion, I like Will Johnson better. I just think, with Jahdae Barron, there is a couple of things that he still needs to work on, whereas with Will Johnson, you kind of know what you're getting. So the thing with Will Johnson, obviously a bigger corner when it comes to height, and definitely more of he's that kind of lockdown corner that you're going to be getting. He's got the toughness and, the grit when it comes to having dude play at Michigan like this. And he was the dude, he was the guy that everybody was afraid to go against. He locked down just most of the defenders in college, and he needs to work on his tackling. His tackling sometimes gets, a little bit, trying to make the big play instead of just wrapping up. But when it comes to him, you're going to be getting basically a dude that is going to be playing, right on the outside. When you look at this, the forced incompletions, a lot of it is just that people didn't really throw to him. Not really too much, very quick. The thing with him is, actually, I don't know if he's my favorite. I would say they're both tied. I think they're both great corners, but he's going to be getting much more of that Jalen Ramsey type of player where you're going to be getting Jahdae Barron that's like a zone, utility knife like Jalen Ramsey was on the Rams. Will Johnson is going to be more like what Jalen Ramsey was on the Jaguars, where he's playing man-to-man on your best guys. You see one snap deep at safety, 23 up in the box, and then you're going to see most of his snaps on the outside. Whereas Jahdae Barron, you kind of saw it everywhere. The missed tackle rate is the one thing that I'm worried about, where it comes to, him just not wrapping up. It might, it could be a college thing where you're just trying to, make big plays, especially at Michigan, and it was a disappointing-ish year for Michigan, but the thing he has to work on is definitely his tackling. Forced incompletions was 7%, which isn't bad. And again, like I said, the guy is great, well-rounded corner. Going to be your number one guy going on the number one guy. And the thing is when it comes to both of them, they're two different styles of player. Will Johnson's going to be, again, he's going to be the stand-up corner. The only thing with him is the tackling. And when it comes to tackling, that's the one thing that I'm scared of is, one of the biggest things that we had a problem with last year was missed tackles, on the Dolphins. It was ridiculous. Like, if you look back to the Green Bay game, the missed tackles were ridiculous. Like, we were letting people break 5 different tackles, so that's kind of one of the things that I want you to see here. But like I said, at the end of the day, great corner, was just phenomenal. He's got another dude with just phenomenal man coverage skills. He just is a pure man corner. He's got a lot of great traits. He's change of direction. All of that stuff is great. It's just the one thing with him is the tackling. But again, Deion Sanders didn't really tackle too much, and he was still a great corner. When it comes to him, the anticipation and the awareness that he has to make plays, just like Jahdae Barron, but I think Will Johnson has it a little better. Will Johnson's instincts are they're a little better, and you're getting a very smart corner that definitely can make some plays on the ball. We'll read the scouting report. Johnson earned 5 starts in 2022 as a true freshman before starting 11 games. National championship campaign in 2023. He missed most of the 2024 season due to a severe case of turf toe, as well as a minor shoulder injury. The 6'2", 200-pound corner is some of the quickest feet you will see, though his limited long speed makes zone schemes in his best fit. He can play press man due to how quick he is to stop and start and change in direction. His long arms come in handy for forced incompletions, a number that was near 55th percentile over the past 2 seasons. His frame is leaner and lighter, but he still shows decent effort in the run defense. Strength and tackling aren't his strong suits, though he was even more inconsistent there in 2024. Keeps his eye on the quarterback. In off-zone coverage, he has good instincts to jump routes, bait throws. He had 9 interceptions, and again, when you're talking about this dude, you're getting like a Deion Sanders. Their player comp is Darius Slate. You're getting like that type of dude. You're getting a guy that, yes, his tackling isn't great, but his instincts, his anticipation, his intelligence, all of that is phenomenal. And you think of a dude like this where, yes, it could be just a regular player, but with Will Johnson, you could be getting one of the best corners in the draft, possibly with him. You work on his tackling ability. That's something that you can definitely make better. Anthony Weaver can definitely make that better. But with Will Johnson, you're going to be getting a guy that's going to make some plays this season. That's essentially what you're getting. You're getting a dude that will make some plays because he just does that. That's just his thing. He's so intelligent, he's very confident in himself. His change of direction, his hip turns, and all of that are phenomenal. He literally can just shoot left or right immediately with the receiver. So he has that great man speed. The speed that he has is, he's not super fast, but he can definitely keep up with some of these guys. But again, at the end of the day, his instincts are just what make him special. And, I think, again, I don't know who's my favorite, but it's one of those things that Will Johnson is just a really solid player. Jahdae Barron, they're both great. They're both great. Yeah, so that's basically what I got. Yeah, like I said, so it's a tough one, tough one. But I'm going Will Johnson as my favorite. I wouldn't be disappointed if either one of these guys were taken, and if the Dolphins sees, more in Jahdae Barron, not disappointed. I like that dude as well. But with Will Johnson, it's just the ability to be special is there. Like he's got something about him that's just different, where you say that with some players, but it's true. He's got something special in him. That 9 interceptions, his season was cut short just because of turf toe and shoulder injuries. But when you watch him play, his instincts, his baiting the quarterback into making throws and all of that, if you can turn those up and turn the tackling woes down, excuse me, he can definitely be something special in this league. Now, Jahdae Barron, same thing. Can be definitely a special player, much better tackler, but there's traits. Much better tackler with Jahdae Barron, but shorter corner. Much more of a versatile utility knife. He's a great player, but different style. Will Johnson is going to be that big corner, change of direction, instinctual, that type of dude. And like I said, I just think if you can turn down the tackling woes and turn up the instincts and the ability to play pure corner, I think you have a stud if you get Will Johnson at 13. But that's going to be my pick. Let me know down in the comments what you guys think, who you think we're going to pick. As always, guys, fins up, baby. Love you all. Peace.